And we're moving into our final conversation for today. Definitely going to be very interesting. As I mentioned earlier, there are big things happening in Belize. The World Youth Conference has officially gotten started last night, where young people from across the world are converging to be able to talk about issues affecting young people and what we can do about them, right? So I have with me on my panel Sujae Boswell, who is the Caribbean representative for the Commonwealth Youth Council. We have in the middle Kyla, Ciego, who is the Caricom Youth Ambassador for Belize. And we have on the end Everton Rattray, who is a member of the Jamaica Youth Advisory Council. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
And thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you as well.
Okay, so I want to start off by finding out a little bit about the individual organizations that you represent, right? So let's start off with you, Sujae. Tell us about the Commonwealth Youth Council.
The Commonwealth Youth Council is an organization that represents young people across the Commonwealth. There are 52 member states as a part of the Commonwealth, and such we have national youth delegates from these countries that participate in the Commonwealth Youth Council. Now what happens is that there's an election that takes place at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, Youth Forum, that takes place with the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, which takes place every 2 to 3 years, depending on the time frame of the service.
Yeah.
Right. So what we do is that we represent the interests of young people. At the Youth Forum, an agenda is set by the young people. This ranges from economic to environment to political and social agenda. And at this, we basically find programs and we create programs to support these agenda that has been set by young people.
Moving on to you, Kyla.
All right, so while I am the new Caricom Youth Ambassador for Belize, I am going to the conference as a representative for Go Belize. And Go Belize is an organization here in Belize, and we're focused on sexual and reproductive health for young people, youth leadership and awareness. And some of the work that Go Belize has done has been around training young people and helping them to realize the importance of sexual health, as well as working with other partners like the Ministry of Health and BFLA in terms of looking at programs on how do we strengthen sexual health education for young people in Belize. But also apart from that, as my new hat as the Caricom Youth Ambassador, our mandate here is to promote Caricom's interest in Belize, as well as to share on the Caricom platform the issues that young people face in Belize, and to also inform policy as it affects young people here.
And moving on to Everton.
Yeah, so the National Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, well, the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica recently launched about a year ago. We focus on youth policies. So any policy that will be implemented through the government of Jamaica, the youth advisors, which is 16 of us selected by the government, through a rigorous process. There are about 300 applicants, and they selected 16 youth leaders to give advice directly to the government. We work, the implementation of the second phase of the program is to work directly with the ministers on policies affecting each ministry. So if, for example, if it's the Ministry of Technology, we would have a youth advisor directly assigned there.
Okay.
So we give advice on policies so that the youth voice is heard in these policies, so that youth have a stand in all of these policies. So far we have worked on the youth and agriculture policy, which was implemented, and we have seen the success, the merits of it so far. So that is the nature of the Youth Advisory Council in Jamaica.
Which ministry do you advise for?
I'm assigned to be working with eventually the Ministry of Technology. So that's I used as an example.
Okay, very fascinating jobs. I have to say that much. And in addition to that, you're regular young people going to school, having a life, being on social media.
Yeah, very much active.
So, you know, the World Youth Conference, I think, has been a highly anticipated event in Belize, one that a lot of preparation has gone into. And I want to talk a little bit about the objectives and the theme for this particular gathering. So it's globally running to 2030, becoming sustainably strong.
Yeah.
So obviously this is very closely in reference to the Sustainable Development Goals.
Right.
And I want to ask, what are your views on your role in being able to be a part of the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals?
Right. Well, young people are oftentimes seen as liabilities to governments, but we are about changing that. And we want governments to understand that we're here to support and we're here to push along development. And as such, we have an important role to play in the SDGs, as at the end of the day in 2030, in 2050, we'll be the leaders in terms of government leaders, in terms of business leaders. And even now, we're social entrepreneurs as young people. So it's essential for us to play a vital role in pushing forward the SDGs.
Okay.
I think for us, it's also important because it raises that awareness. You know, as Sujae said, we're young today, but we will progress, and there are other people coming up. So what the conference also represents, I think, going away from it, each young person, you have that personal mandate to not just your own awareness, but the awareness of other young people around you as to the importance of the SDGs, and realize that this is our planet, we're all the inhabitants here, and we need to preserve it. So we need to take care of it for those coming up after us.
Yeah, they pretty much summed it up in terms of understanding that it's sustainability. It's about the long term, you know, it's not about the short term. And if we don't think long term, then there won't be a future. And if there isn't a future, then there is nothing. So it is about that long term thinking, and how we play a role is that, you know, as stated by Boswell, through the youth programs, you know, us understanding that sometimes government do see us as a liability, but understanding that our role is greater than that. Every three individuals that exist in this world, there's one young person. And it is sad to know that in such a population, young people don't have a voice. You know, a tokenistic approach is taken. So it is a very important one that we play.
I'm glad you touched on that, because I think, you know, Sujae, you said oftentimes that young people are viewed as liabilities, and I think there is a very common generalization that is placed on young people, and I know it's common in Belize and oftentimes in other countries as well, that you simply don't care what's happening in the country. We don't see young people taking up advocacy movements in masses. I know there's small groups at work. We don't see young people speaking out on issues at times when people know that it's relevant to young people. We have a decriminalization of marijuana conversation happening now. We haven't heard the voices of the young people. So let me ask you, when people say young people don't care about the issues, is that the case?
I don't think it is. At the end of the day, you can't use a minority to judge for the majority, and you can use a majority to judge for the minority in some cases. However, I think that having a listening ear, and when you make a contribution and you see that contribution going into effect, it has a different impact on the young persons. Because at the end of the day, if I'm saying to you, you can't sit there, and you still go and sit there, even though we suggested as young people that it's not healthy for you to sit there, and we don't see you working with what we're saying, then it becomes difficult to encourage young people to continue to contribute to the process or try to contribute to the process. So what we want is that when young people make a suggestion, when it's viable, at least, to ensure that you put some effort into getting it done. Because as Rattray said, the tokenistic approach to youth in governance, to youth in advocacy, it won't work. So it's important for that. At the end of the day, yes, there are a lot of young people who are disenchanted from the processes, from politics. Apathy is very vibrant right across the region. So it's to see some form of change. And in my advocacy in Jamaica, I always go around to young people and let them know that the political process is something that we're needed in. You can't sit away from politics, because as the educated ones, as the persons who are seen as an articulate minority, if you stay away, it will be the persons who are not so inclined that will get into the process, and then the process won't change and you won't have any form of development. So we try to encourage young people to get involved. So yes, there are some who are really not interested. There are some who don't know better. So it's up to us as youth leaders, and we're doing, to get our fellow young people involved.
Why do you think that we have that we seem to have a growing population of young people who are just disinterested in what is taking place within their countries or the region?
Well, leadership plays a significant role in that.
The emphasis that is placed on youth involvement and youth engagement as well. Not to say that we don't have we have to take initiative, yes, we understand that. But when there's not an emphasis by government, when there's not an emphasis on youth development within the local context itself, it makes it hard for you to get involved. You know, when there's not...
And one of the things you have to take into consideration as well is that historically, activism, we are not in the era of activism, to be honest. The 1970s and 1960s, when youth activism was vibrant, it was quite relevant. So we don't necessarily have that type of environment where activism is
not in this part of the world,
not in this region.
young people taking
what
the
we're
lead.
doing now is that we're trying to reshape that.
Yeah.
So through the Commonwealth Youth Council, through the Caribbean Regional Youth Council, these organizations within the region are trying to push for youth activism to get and to grow and grow stronger.
Yeah, regional voice, international voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying. You're saying you want to be involved, but it is a part of the result of expressing your thoughts and your concerns on issues and having it be ignored. And that's the tokenism that you're talking about.
Tokenism.
You know, you put that one young person there and say talk, and then afterwards just
Just
say
for the
thank
show.
you and send them on their way.
Right.
When you talk about this particular gathering, and I can only imagine the energy in a room of young leaders from all
telling you.
across the world coming together, what are your objectives? What do you hope to be able to bring out from the individual youth leaders who are present? And what will be the hope in terms of the message you want to send out as a body of youth leaders from across the world?
I think one of the objectives of the youth conference is to, one, provide young people with that platform to become even more involved, and creating that greater rapport with young people, that what you do in Senegal and what I do in Belize and what you do in Jamaica is all for a concerted effort and initiative towards the sustainable development goals. And it's also about building those partnerships and those networking, because the world is big, but it's not so big, you know. And so us as young people, you are learning more about the SDGs. You are going to be listening to these very informative and intense sessions at that, and you're going to walk away with your mandate going back into your country. So I think that is part of the big objective as to why we're doing this.
One of the major things, as you said as well, is to understand the practices that is taking place across the world, because there'll be a lot of young people from it. There's over 43 countries that are here in Belize representing, you know, the youth population, and that means there will be should I say, a position, or you know, from which they handle youth issues in their country, and they'll be sharing all those with us, so we can share with the young people how you do it. You know, this practice might not be working in that country, but you probably could try it and see if it works in your local space. And that is what we're trying to do: share the practices among young people from across the world.
One of the things you appropriately said is that there's a lot of energy, and what we want to do is we want to convert this energy into sustainable energy and to push forward. At the end of the day, I see young people as the feet towards the SDGs, and if we properly get the feet active, if we get it exercised, then I do believe that we can see some form of change and growth.
What seems to be some of the common issues that you're hearing? I know the conference just started, so right now it's kind of just getting to meet and greet sessions taking place. But I'm sure you've been able, because you're articulate young leaders already, to be able to hear a bit from others in other parts of the world, outside of the Caribbean region, as to where similarities exist for obstacles or opportunities for young people. What are we hearing so far?
Well, gender equality is one of the big ones that come up. Young men who are he for she supporting gender equality, they want to see women as equals and not as second runner. So that's a big conversation. Climate change is another conversation that comes to play.
Youth and employment.
The Pacific and the Caribbean see eye to eye where that is concerned. Youth unemployment
is another big issue.
It's a big one.
The big one that we continue to see, you know, being a problem, and access as well, whether it be access to education in certain regions and areas, we find to be some of the main issues that we find among young people.
One of the things that came up in a conversation I had with a young person last night was just the governance in their country and the institutions and you know, the access. So that's a big
education.
one.
Education is another big one that came up. Access to
quality
education
access to education
is the issue.
Now we're in a very peculiar time. I think, you know, and I don't like harping on the negative things that some of the young people are attributed to, but unfortunately those are the first impressions that the general public tends to have. And there are many young people like yourselves who work with small groups, give up your free time after the homework and the school and the friends time and everything else to be able to try to make a difference within your community. And I want to ask, what is the difference between someone who steps forward as a youth leader, who reaches the point of involvement, as you guys are now, representing your countries and your institutions at a global conference, and others who don't get that opportunity? What is the difference?
Well, one of the first thing that you have to look at is awareness. A lot of people aren't aware of programs that exist.
Okay.
That's why I said it's important for us as youth leaders to share the information. I can tell you back home, I'm from an inner city community. And I can give an example. I was actually reasoning with some of the young people from the community, and a lady said to me, "Why am I there? Don't you know better? Why are you sitting on the corner?" And it comes down to people who know better and people who know what exists to share that information, because if you don't know, then you can't go. So it's important for us as young people who know and have access to share. And it also takes government intervention to ensure that social programs that exist are spread properly across the countries and the region.
As representatives of wider councils, so we have Commonwealth, you are representative essentially of the government of Jamaica and also Caricom. How much would you say that you are listened to, and not just listened to, but that your ideas, your perceptions, your concerns are taken into consideration as a part of the final actions coming out of any one of these bodies?
Yeah, well, as I said, from where I sit in Jamaica as a youth advisor to the government, the 16 of us selected, we have done a number of initiatives so far, and we have seen where the government have taken those into significant, so what I can speak, as I said before, the agriculture, the youth in agriculture policy that was recently implemented here in Jamaica was one of those things that we looked at, where we had made suggestions to the government, and they were taken into great consideration, and we saw the implementation of such. We looked at the green paper as well, the youth policy, which we have been trying to work on for a while in Jamaica. We have seen where the advice from young people have been taken into concern. And there are a number of issues that we're working on.
So Everton, this is fascinating to me. Tell me a bit more about this process. So there is a policy that is being created by government, and they reach out to their specific youth advisor. Who does? The minister, representatives of the ministry itself? They reach out to that youth advisor, and tell me how that process works. Okay,
so we go through the Ministry of Youth and Education. Through the Ministry of Youth, there's an advisor, there's a project manager directly assigned to advise the youth advisors, to assist the youth advisors rather, which is Kyla. A very lovely young lady, which I continue to speak of in that light. So she assists us in making sure that all the policies from the various ministries that they need to be revised or they need advice on, they're sent to us directly. What we do from there is that we set up small groups, task force, to actually look at these stuff, look at the policy, look at it in breaking it down and see how young people can actually contribute to it meaningfully. Getting persons who are expert in that particular industry to come in and look at it. And through that we put forward a paper, basically with advice, suggestions and stuff going forward.
So essentially you do a consultation for the youth perspective.
Yeah, we do pretty much a consultation from a youth perspective.
Okay, that's fascinating.
And I can tell you from the pan-Commonwealth level, we have been working as a Commonwealth Youth Council, we're the highest body in the Commonwealth for representing youth. So what we do is that we consult governments as well. So I can tell you, we have a disabilities conference coming up in Antigua in December, which we have been talking to the government, started with the High Commission, and we have that access. So we'll be hosting young people from Antigua, disabilities focused. So there has been some level of exchange between governments from our seat. And as such, we can say that there has been a success in terms of government.
Well, I'm looking forward to being able to exercise it, because as you are aware, I recently came back into the country.
And you recently adopted this role as well.
Yes.
So I think this is a great opportunity. We love highlighting, especially I love to see young people making positive strides in their country, in working with other young people. But how do we reach those who have not followed in mainstream practices? Maybe they're not in school. Maybe they have come in conflict with the law. Maybe they're perhaps already settling down into some kind of married life, young people who perhaps are not excelling to the potential that they can. How do we reach them? How does a World Youth Conference reach or represent the views of this particular group of young people?
Well, one of the things, as Rattray said, that we do is consult.
Yeah.
We have to go into the communities and consult young people. At the end of the day, we won't be representatives if we go and give our opinions.
Yeah.
We can't just come and sit and say, well, this is what young people need. We have to go out into the communities and speak to the young people and get their views. In terms of transforming the minds of young people, it has to start with a process of self-transformation first. We can't say we want you to do this and we're not doing it. So we have to lead by example and to show the opportunities that exist. Because at the end of the day, when somebody sees an opportunity and they see how it can affect them and how it can benefit them, then they will act in line to receive that opportunity. I can tell you, crime is a currency of misdeeds, right? And if we show young people the opportunity that exists, a better life from crime, then I'm sure that you'll find young people going forward in the right way.
Yeah, I think just to add to what Sujae said, we're young people and we are in our communities, we live in our communities, our friends are other young people, you know, and so it's easy to talk to your friends, to share some of the things that you're experiencing, and whether we realize it or not, there are other young people that look up to you. So maybe they're not actively engaged, maybe they're not attached to a youth organization or some sort of youth group, but if they see somebody from their local community doing something, then even that in itself could motivate them.
One of the things as well, as it pertains to the youth, the young people that are here at the conference, is that they would have been persons who would have started big programs that are making tremendous strides in their local spaces. And one of the good things is that they would have been selected on that basis to be here. So those are projects that are actually reaching young people. And as I said, one of the things that we want to see, our outcome from the conference, is young people practicing other strategies from other areas that would further reach other young people. So that is a way that I think through these international platforms that we're able to, you know, expand the reach of young people, expand how we inspire young people to realize that you are the future, to realize that